I'm not sure there's a worse kind of loneliness than the loneliness you feel sitting at a table you built for your family, staring at a plate meant for a grandchild you've never met. My name is Charles Mayfield, 69 years old, retired attorney, father of one, widower, and 3 times over, a man who put his heart on the line for family. I grew up thinking a man's purpose was to provide, build a home, teach your child right from wrong, and someday hold your grandchildren in your arms. I did all of that, or tried to, but nothing I built prepared me for the ache that comes when your only son slips away, piece by piece, until you realize you are a visitor in his life and a stranger to your own blood. I know I'm not unique in this. Maybe you're listening, thinking about your own child, how you barely recognize the man or woman they've become. I see you. I want to tell you how it happened to me and what I learned when I found myself on the outside, looking in, asking for scraps of news about a grandchild who, for months, existed to me only as a line in an email in the shadow of a photograph. It started, or rather, I first noticed it 3 years after my wife Adrienne lost her battle with cancer. She and I built a life in Columbus, Ohio, 40-plus years by each other's side. Our son Peter was our pride. He grew into a careful, studious man, the kind you assumed would always pick up the phone when his father called. For a long time, he did. Peter met Caitlin at a legal education conference. She was a paralegal, sharp as a tack, all business in blazers that never caught a wrinkle. The first time I met her, she shook my hand and called me Mr. Mayfield. I tried to welcome her in to find common ground, but small talk only seemed to make her more formal. At first, I chalked it up to nerves, to her youth. Over the years, instead of wearing away, the distance seemed to harden. The first warning sign was small. Holidays began to change, from long evenings around our dining table to quick lunches at restaurants halfway between our homes. It's easier this way, Peter would say. Every gathering had to be scheduled weeks in advance and was often rescheduled at the last minute. When I brought up Adrienne's favorite traditions, hanging her favorite ornaments, reading the old library books she loved, Caitlin would smile tightly and say, "Let's keep it simple this year." After a while, the simple version meant not being invited at all. Still, I tried. I kept my voice cheerful on the phone, even as weeks stretched between calls. I learned to become the kind of father who waited for updates instead of expecting to be included. Then, in early winter, Peter and Caitlin visited for dinner. They sat stiffly in the living room as though they were in a hotel lobby, not my home. After pie, Peter cleared his throat and said, "We have some news." My heart jumped, I guessed before he said it. "We're expecting," he smiled, tentative, as if I would somehow object to such happiness. I forced myself to hold in the welling tears. I congratulated them, beaming, and told them how happy Adrienne would have been. Caitlin shifted in her seat, glanced at her watch, and changed the subject to work. That night, I dug an old tin from our attic, the one with Adrienne's knitting needles, and pulled out the softest yellow yarn I could find. I wasn't very good, but I made a small blanket anyway, remembering how my wife's hands used to move as she worked. As winter turned, I drove to their house, placed the completed blanket in a card in their mailbox, and texted Peter that a little something was waiting. He replied 12 hours later, "Thanks, Dad." Caitlin appreciates the thought. No thank you from her. I let it go. Weeks went by. I tried not to smother them with messages, thinking I was being respectful. I sent a card at 12 weeks, then at 16. No answer. In May, Peter finally called. "We had the scam. Everything's fine. Caitlin's taking it easy." I asked if they knew when the baby was due, just casual, not pressing. He hesitated. "We're keeping the due date to ourselves for now, Dad. Caitlin just wants to avoid pressure." I laughed lightly, told him I understood, and ignored the stab in my chest. More time passed. My friends brag about counting down to their grandchild's birth, painting nurseries with daughters-in-law, fighting with children about stroller brands. I found myself jealous of their complaints. I went to my sister's house. Her youngest daughter showed me photos Caitlin posted on Facebook. New paint, stuffed animals, pregnancy milestones. When I tried to friend Caitlin, my request sat unanswered. I told myself I didn't care. Summer became fall. I grew more conscious of my age, how many good years I truly had left. I wrote Peter a short letter, careful and kind, reminding him how much I wanted to help, to be involved. I tucked in a note that said, "Adrienne would have been thrilled. I hope you'll let me share in this." No reply. When Thanksgiving came, I left a voicemail offering a host. He texted back, "We're going to spend it quietly this year. Her parents are coming down." I imagined their house, just a few miles away, full of laughter and stories I'd never get to hear. December arrived. I called on a Tuesday, hoping to catch Peter at lunch. Caitlin answered, terse, he's busy. Can you email? I asked if everything was all right. We're fine, Charles. Please email. The line disconnected. Christmas passed. I placed a wrapped present for the baby under the tree, unopened. I spent the holiday with my sister and her grandchildren, watching their chaos and laughter with a bittersweet ache. On New Year's Day, I resolved to be more patient. I tried to believe my time would come. No one can keep a grandfather away forever, my neighbor said, meaning well. It didn't feel true. I'll never forget the morning everything changed. A bitter February wind rattled the window panes. You know that cold that finds its way into your joints and sits there, unbudgeable. I had just finished my coffee when my phone buzzed. An email from Caitlin appeared in my inbox. The subject line was blank. The body of the message read, she's 11 weeks. We're all healthy. Please communicate through Peter about future updates. No greeting. No photo except a scanned, gray ultrasound attachment. It looked like a storm cloud with a smudge at the edge. I sat at the kitchen table staring. The only update I received from my own family was less personal than the messages I received from my own utility company. I tried, but I could not stop myself from replying. I wrote, thank you for sharing. I'm grateful she's healthy, and I hope you'll let me know if you need anything at all. That was the extent of it. No reply, no animation, no emoji. After that, radio silence. For 8 long weeks. Those 8 weeks, I lived my life by the phone. I kept my calendar cleared, afternoons and weekends open, just in case Peter called or someone needed me for anything, any small errand, any excuse to be pulled into their orbit. I'd walk past the nursery stores downtown, watch young couples pick out strollers and crib sheets, and imagine myself standing beside them, giving half-remembered advice. Instead, I woke up to silence. I turned 69 with a quietly hopeful heart. No card, no call, only a brief HBD dead text from Peter 3 days late. The ache is not dramatic, not the kind that makes you shout. It's just an emptiness that lingers whenever the day draws to a close and there are more memories in your head than responsibilities on your plate. I tried to keep busy. I volunteered at the local library, sorting books, teaching a Know Your Rights class to middle schoolers who couldn't have cared less if there were 2 generations between us. The truth, you can fill your time all you like, but you can't replace family. You can only wait and hope. My sister, God love her, took it upon herself to keep me informed. Caitlin posted a baby bump selfie. She'd say, looks like she's due late spring. I thanked her and tried to hide my shame that I was learning about my own grandchild secondhand like some distant relative. My son, meanwhile, grew more remote. Every time we talked brief, clipped calls, he sounded rushed, overworked. We're just busy, Dad. The nursery, Caitlin's mom, is helping out. Lots on our plate. When I offered to drop off groceries or cook a meal, he'd always have an excuse. Caitlin's resting, or we're keeping things low-key until the baby comes. I wanted to believe there was some good reason for the distance, maybe exhaustion, maybe nerves, maybe Caitlin just found me old-fashioned. That doubt is the hardest part for people our age. You replay every interaction, looking for some word or gesture you could have changed, scanning yourself for mistakes you never intended to make. I lived an honest life. I paid my debts, apologized when I was wrong, tried to show up, especially when it was easier to walk away. I never imagined needing to fight for a place in my own son's life, much less my grandchild's. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. I stared at Peter's name for a full minute before answering, afraid of what I'd hear, afraid of another brush-off. His voice was low, tired. Dad, sorry for the radio silence. Caitlin's parents have basically moved in. She's on bed rest. I figured you'd want to know. Relief and sadness mingled. I was grateful for any news, even bad. I asked, is there anything you need? Anything I can do? He hesitated, then finally said, we're fine. Just wanted to keep you in the loop. The call ended, unfinished, and I sat listening to the lonely tick of the kitchen clock. I started writing in a notebook, a habit I picked up after Adrienne died so I wouldn't waste my words where they weren't wanted. I wrote updates to my future granddaughter, entries she might never read. Today your dad called, he sounded tired. I hope you'll have his soft heart, his stubborn optimism. I miss you already, even though you don't know my name. In late April, while cleaning the attic, I came across boxes from Peter's childhood Lego sets, baseball mitt, a yellow raincoat he hated, Memories flooded back, late-night birthday cakes, heroics at Little League, the quiet pride of seeing your own values reflected back in your child. I packed a small box for the new baby, handwritten notes, a pair of Adrian's silver rattles, and a photograph of her beaming with joy. I delivered it to their doorstep and left a card. No need to reply, just something for your little one to know where she comes from. The next day, I received another email from Caitlin. Thank you for the package. Please do not drop by unannounced in the future. We will ask for help if we need it. Curt, efficient, no warmth beneath the words. For weeks, I wondered if I'd crossed a line I couldn't see. As the due date approached, I sent Peter a message. Son, I'd like to be there for you however I can, even if that means giving you space. But please, keep me updated. The answer came back, we'll let you know when she arrives. That absence of belonging, the feeling of being useful only as an emergency backup, is something the younger generation never warns you about. We spend decades preparing for old age, for retirement, for health scares. No one prepares you for invisibility. When the call finally came, it wasn't from Peter. My sister called first, voice trembling with excitement. Congratulations! Caitlin had the baby, a girl. She posted it publicly. I stared at the phone. Relief, joy, and humiliation crashed through me all at once. I checked my messages. Nothing. My neighbor brought it up the next morning. Saw the pictures online. She's gorgeous. Charles, you must be proud. I smiled and told him I hadn't seen them yet. By late afternoon, I broke down and called my son. It went to voicemail. I left a message, a long, rambling speech meant for both him and Caitlin, hoping they'd hear just one genuine, unfinished note of hope. I love you both. My granddaughter is lucky to have you. If you have room, you have family. Days passed. No response. I sat with the ache as winter melted into spring, convincing myself that maybe meeting her was asking too much. Maybe they'd come around in their own time. Then, in early June, Peter called. We'd like you to meet Evelyn. His voice was threaded with nerves. Just meet us at Goodale Park, Saturday at noon. Please, Dad, nothing big. Caitlin still needs rest. I got there early. I wore my best jacket, even ironed a shirt, first time in years. I stood by the fountain, holding a brown paper bag of pastries I'd baked myself. Peter arrived, pushing the stroller, Caitlin close behind, eyes hidden behind large sunglasses. My heart ran wild. There she was, my granddaughter, asleep in a sea of tiny blankets and hats, impossibly small and soft. Peter gently handed her to me. I felt the weight heavier than I remembered from holding Peter, softer, a little fragile universe against my arms. Caitlin hovered a few steps back, eyeing every movement. For the next hour, I rocked Evelyn, whispered stories, tried not to let the tears fall onto her blanket. Caitlin checked her watch. Peter, we should go soon. Her schedule. I apologized for losing track of time. They packed up to leave. Before they left, Peter looked at me, hesitant. Thanks for being patient, Dad. It's been hard. He squeezed my hand. We'll call. I promise. I watched them walk away through the spring sunlight. Their world closed around them. But for the first time in months, I had proof I mattered, proof I existed, even if only at the edges. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, holding the photo from Caitlin's first email in one hand and Evelyn's scent on my shirt. The ache was still there, but quieter now, as if someone had finally opened a window inside his stuffy room. If you're where I am, waiting for a call that doesn't always come, know this: your patience is not wasted. Even if you're only welcome on the brightest day, or in a public park, or for the briefest embrace, your love counts, measured beat by beat in the space you make and the dignity you choose to keep. After that first meeting in Goodale Park, I thought things might change for the better. For a few days, I lived with a kind of quiet expectation, waiting for the next invitation, the next little sign of thaw. I rehearsed what I would say if Caitlin called, how I'd thank her, how I'd listen more and talk less, how I'd show I could be the kind of grandfather who earned a place, not a burden pressing in where he wasn't wanted. But spring passed into summer and the silence returned, thick as ever. Twice more, Peter reached out. Once he texted late at night, Dad, any chance you're free next weekend? I scrambled to rearrange my calendar, answered within 2 minutes. Each time, he needed help for a reason. Caitlin was unwell. Her mother was out of town. They needed someone to watch Evelyn for an hour or two. Always at a neutral place, the park, the library, the coffee shop at the edge of downtown. If you've ever bathed in sunlight you knew wouldn't last, you understand the feeling, the joy of holding Evelyn, marveling at the curve of her cheek or the tiny dimple of her hand. But when the visit was over, I'd hand her back and see them slip away, not pausing, not inviting me home. I'd come home, and the ache returned, joined by a new companion, uncertainty. Was I being used for convenience, a last option on the list, the easy backup? Was that okay? Even in the hard moments, the answer surprised me. It was. If this was the only way to see my granddaughter, I'd take it, every time. One day, summer shining bright, I offered to drop off groceries at their place. I bought organic baby food, diapers, and a bouquet for Caitlin. At their door, Peter met me on the porch, arms tight across his chest. "Dad, thanks, but next time, just call. Caitlin's resting again." He looked over his shoulder before accepting the bag, guilt and gratitude fighting in his eyes. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I just wanted to help." "I know," he replied. It's not a good day." I walked back to my car, and as I left, I saw Caitlin through the window, holding Evelyn, looking out with an expression I couldn't read. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I am trying not to take it personally. They are building their own family. Have I become a ghost at their feast, visible only in need? The truth is, I wanted so badly for all of us to heal. I carry the old pain of Adrian's passing, the regret that I couldn't fix what was slipping between my fingers. I remembered all the times my own parents had shown up, even when I barely noticed. I remembered how I took it for granted, then missed it so fiercely when they were gone. The calendar turned to autumn. I started a new ritual every Sunday. I'd text Peter a photograph from his childhood, him at the lake, him building a birdhouse with Adrian, him standing with his first dog on the porch. Sometimes he replied, sometimes not. Once he texted, "I miss Mom, too, Dad." That was the closest we'd come to talking about the empty chair at our table. A friend from church told me to keep showing up and loving them, even from the distance they set. She was right, but it's one thing to hear good advice and another to live through those quiet Sundays watching football alone, waiting for the phone to ring. A few weeks later, as the air grew crisp and the leaves began to blush gold, something shifted. Peter called, his voice dry with exhaustion, sounding older than his years. "Dad, Caitlin is going back to work in a month, and daycare's been a nightmare. Would you consider watching Evelyn on Fridays? Just a half day. If it's too much, I understand." I had to sit down. My first instinct was to talk myself out of it. Would Caitlin agree? Was I being set up for disappointment? But the hope was too strong. "Of course I'll do it," I said, almost afraid to believe my own voice. The next week, Peter dropped Evelyn at my house for the very first time. He stood uncertain in the hallway, scanning for hazards like a man letting go of something fragile. Allergies are in the bag, her naps at 10, bottles already mixed. I nodded, fighting back tears. "I'll take care of her, Peter." The day went slow, and sweet Evelyn napped in Adrian's old rocking chair, which I'd saved for just such a day. I read aloud from the books we kept for years in a chest under the window, then bundled her up for a slow walk through the garden. I pointed out sparrows, let her clutch dandelion stems, listened to her gurgle as if she'd been born with laughter in her bones. You don't realize how much love you have left to give until you're given 10 easy hours to spend it. Each tiny gesture, a kiss on the forehead, a whispered song, a steady hand guiding a wobbly step, felt like an answer to all the prayers I'd whispered in the quiet months. When Peter came to pick her up, he stood in the kitchen for a moment, looking around at the old family photographs, the refrigerator covered in decades of clumsy art and faded postcards. "Thanks for today, Dad." He meant it, I knew, because his voice trembled in the old way, the way it had when he was a boy and needed comfort after a bad dream. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and dug out Adrian's box of old letters. She had a way of being present even when she wasn't in the room. I read the note she left when Peter was born. No one prepares you for love that big or the fear you'll never deserve it. I realized then that longing to be included, longing to be seen isn't shameful. It's honest. It's the best evidence of a life well lived. The Fridays began to stack up, a bright chain in a dim season. Evelyn started to know me not just as a recurring face, but as someone safe, someone who could make her smile with a single silly noise. I caught myself talking to her the way Adrian used to talk to Peter, gentle, steady, always offering more patience than I thought I had. Caitlin remained distant, but her edges softened. Sometimes she'd send a text asking what Evelyn ate for lunch or how her nap had gone, nothing more. Once, she thanked me. Just the words, "Thank you, Charles," but it meant enough. Watching my granddaughter grow, seeing my son relax in my presence, I understood that family isn't an entitlement. It has to be tended, watered, forgiven over and over, long after you think you should have been invited in. Still, not everything healed. Thanksgiving came, and I spent it alone again, Peter apologizing. Caitlin's folks are hosting, her aunt's visiting with her bad hip. "We'll see you soon." I told him to enjoy it. The quiet hurt, but I tried not to let bitterness crowd out gratitude. I built a life that could hold a little sadness and still make room for hope. If you've ever found yourself on the edge of your own family's life, watching from outside, clinging to small, hard-won invitations, I want you to know there's dignity in the waiting. We can't control how we are received, but we can decide how we show up when called. Because that's what I kept telling myself on those long afternoons with Evelyn asleep on my shoulder. No matter how small the invitation, I'll be there, bringing all the love I've saved up. No questions asked. Winter returned, as winters do in Ohio, cold, gray, relentless. The world felt held in a kind of slow suspension, like everything could break or thaw at the smallest touch. Evelyn turned one. I baked a cake in Adrian's old bundt pan and brought it to the park, careful not to overstep. We sat on a picnic bench, blowing out a single candle in the wind, my granddaughter reaching for my finger, her laughter echoing against the bare trees. Caitlin took a photo for the first time. She sent it to me later that night, without comment, but the fact that she did it all felt like a truce, or at least a beginning. I printed it and put it on my mantle, next to the wedding picture of my wife, one new, one old, both proof that some part of love endures when you keep showing up for it. That winter, I found myself living for Fridays. Evelyn and I established routines, stacking colored blocks, singing nursery rhymes I had half forgotten but now remembered word for word, cracking Cheerios in our teeth, and sharing silent, joyful laughter that couldn't be faked. She began to run to me when the doorbell rang, arms open, squealing, "Papa." Yes, my chosen name at last. I never coaxed it. I just waited. Sometimes, we'd sit by the window looking for cardinals the same way I once did with Peter. I'd tell Evelyn you were loved long before you knew it, and she'd nod as if she understood. Caitlin's updates stayed brief but polite. Peter talked more, asked real questions, and sometimes he'd linger when picking Evelyn up, staring at the old photographs or the stack of letters on my desk. One Friday, after Evelyn was tucked up for her nap, he sat down beside me. "Dad," he started, his voice low, "it wasn't meant to be like this. Caitlin, things have been hard for her. After her father left, she got used to assuming the worst, that family can hurt you, or just leave. I didn't want to choose between you, but sometimes one person's boundaries become another person's wall." He shook his head. "I should have tried harder, for all of us." I sat quietly with my son, resisting the urge to fill the silence, to rush forgiveness just to ease the ache. Some wounds need to breathe before they can close. When he finally met my eyes, I nodded. "I'm here whenever you need me. For you, for Evelyn, for all the ordinary days." I could see the relief in his shoulders, maybe a little regret, too. I told him about keeping Adrian's letters, about the entries I'd been writing for Evelyn all year unsent, but hopeful. "If you ever want her to read them, they're hers by right," I said. He nodded, swallowing hard. As spring arrived again, the shape of our family began to change. I was invited for Sunday dinners, small at first, just one plate, then two, then a high chair and sticky fingers at every meal. I learned to step in and out as needed, giving space, accepting the invitations, not making them prove themselves over and over. I still missed Adrian terribly. I'd sit outside on warm evenings, looking at my granddaughter playing in the yard with Peter, and feel her absence like a space carved out of the air beside me. But I'd also feel her presence in the traditions we kept, the kindness we used to mend what time and fear had broken. Not every rift closed overnight. Some Thanksgivings, I'm still by myself. Some birthdays, I hear about them later. But I built a new kind of patience, the kind that holds space for imperfect reconciliation, a kind that doesn't keep score or freeze out hope, even when hope feels foolish. Sometimes I catch Evelyn looking at the old pictures on my mantel and asking, "Who's that?" When I tell her stories about her grandmother, how she loved crocuses and made the best peach cobbler, Evelyn listens quietly, accepting those pieces of history as her own. I still keep that 11-week ultrasound in my wallet, and yes, sometimes I take it out, tracing the old, blurry outline with my thumb. I don't do this to punish myself or even to dwell in what I missed. I do it because I want to remember. Some beginnings are small, barely visible, easy to overlook, but with patience and love, even the faintest image becomes something you can hold. If you're listening to this, waiting at a distance, aching to be let in, or worrying you've already lost your place, please know. Sometimes it takes more than one season for a door to be unlocked. Sometimes your chance comes as a favor, a phone call, an unexpected hour in a park. Show up for it, even if it hurts. Show up with kindness, with patience, with the faith that what you build, one visit, one lullaby, one ordinary day at a time, might just become the foundation for something better than what was lost. And if you've made it all the way to the end of my story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever built your family from the outside in? Did you find your way back, or learn to hold your own boundaries with grace? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening, and I know from experience that sometimes all we really need is to know we're not waiting alone. Hit subscribe if this story feels like yours. There's more ahead, and more still worth sharing, especially for those of us who keep showing up, even when the invitation comes late. Because dignity, in the end, isn't about who lets you in or who keeps you out. It's about how you wait, how you love, and how you hold the door open for the next person longing to come home.